Hey, I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, in celebration of International Guitar Month, Pete Townsend of The Who will join us.
Pete went deep with us into his relationship with the guitar and with music in general, the new Broadway version of Tommy. He clarified the status and the future of The Who, and much, much more.
Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Chris Hahn, the Aggressive Progressive. Check out a new episode of the Aggressive Progressive podcast every Tuesday. You know, the election is heating up just as the year is winding down. Stick with me. I'll tell you the truth as I see it. Download the Aggressive Progressive on Pandora or wherever you get your podcasts.
When I can kind of help an artist go back and reassess their own greatness, that means a lot to me, because kind of like we were talking a little bit about before, where you get involved in the industry, quote unquote, after a while, it really starts to mess with your head. Like you start kind of, it clouds the way that you view what you're going to do next. Because like, wow, I didn't sell as many with that last record, so maybe I'm doing something wrong. And it can, and once if the label starts saying, hey, you know what, like you got to get this hot producer because you got to do this, and otherwise your record's not going to sell, and which is total BS. Like that's not, it just depends. It doesn't have to be a known producer. It doesn't have to be a known MC. If you make great music, you make great music. So yeah, I would say that that's incredible when something like that does happen. The same thing I remember when I was talking to Eric Sermon about the first EPMD years and years ago, and just he kind of paused and was like, that really was a dope record. And then I was kind of like, yeah, it was, but at the same time you can see why he'd forget how dope it was, because it for me as a fan, I try and bring myself back to that more innocent time when it's just like no one knew that EPMD that was going to work, like because that had never really been done before, the way they put music together, the way they both sounded, blah blah. So the other thing too that I think that people tend to forget, that I try and remind people about, is that artists are the ultimate fans, because literally that's the highest level of fandom, is to want to create music on your own. So you love it so much that you want to be part of it, that you want to, and different people do it different ways, like luckily I never tried to be an MC. I'm a big fan, but that would not have gone well. So in my own way, I guess I try and contribute by writing these books, because I feel that maybe that's the best way for me as a fan to express and try and give back to what hip-hop has given to me. And that's what artists do too. They say, wow, I mean, so Nas was like, Cool G Rap's my favorite, MC of all time, and I just want to be like him, or I want to do something like that, but even iller. And that's always like that should be why you do something, is to say all these things have influenced me up to this point, and I'm going to just try and add on to it. I'm going to do something. Clearly you can tell most of the time who someone's influenced by, and it's how they, so the question is, do they imitate that person and bite, or do they kind of take it to a whole nother level, or a different gear, or even go in a different direction? So you can see someone who's influenced by Rakim, but they don't sound like Rakim at all, but you can kind of be like, wow, okay, I see how they synthesized what was going on before them and branched it out into a whole new thing. So that's really, to me, it's incredible if I can help remind some of these artists how dope they are. That's pretty awesome. So and I really do think they forget a lot of times, because the music industry is almost made to make people second guess themselves, because no one in the music industry generally knows what the hell they're talking about. There's a select few people in the industry who actually, first of all, care about art versus just let's make a quick buck, and secondly, know what the hell they're talking about. Like, they might think they do, but then you start second guessing yourself. That's like the death knell. And then you look at someone like Rakim, who not through any real fault of his own, and like say in the late 90s, floundered because he was always waiting for Dre to give him tracks, and he was supposed to put out that record. And like, imagine if he hadn't had to do that and was kind of hadn't been held hostage by the industry for so long, and had just been purely working, and maybe working with whatever, like, you know, he and LP started doing a record together, or he and Jay Dilla started, you know, who knows what could have happened. So sometimes, yeah, it's frustrating. And if you strip it down to just pure artistic expression, yet again, that brings us back to Too Short, Schoolie D, who had no one at a label saying you should do this or you should do that, and didn't have anyone even producing them. They produced themselves, so it was just pure artistic expression. Let's put it out and cross our fingers. Hopefully so people buy enough of these so I don't actually lose money. And sometimes they became huge hits, sometimes they didn't, but at least they tried.
I'm Chris Hahn, the Aggressive Progressive. Check out a new episode of the Aggressive Progressive podcast every Tuesday. You know, the election is heating up just as the year is winding down. Stick with me. I'll tell you the truth as I see it. Download the Aggressive Progressive on Pandora or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, in celebration of International Guitar Month, Pete Townsend of The Who will join us.
Pete went deep with us into his relationship with the guitar and with music in general. The new Broadway version of Tommy. He clarified the status and the future of The Who, and much, much more.
Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.